Keep your head down and work like I do.
So you want to document more, and you're hoping the Nano will help. It will, but only if you change how you think about it. See, I'm a director at heart, but in order to document more, I had to become a producer. And the Nano gives me just enough freedom to make things, with the guardrails in place to actually finish them. So welcome to my day 2 perspectives on the DJI Osmo Nano. And it's not actually day 2, but we'll just call it day 2 because my first impressions got me in the door. I experienced some things. I played around a little bit, but now I'm settling in a little bit more and trying to figure out how I can integrate this camera into my workflow. And I want to start by saying I don't feel like I emphasize enough the primary reason that I wanted this camera. And it is to shoot handheld. It's my biggest complaint with the Osmo Pocket 3. Love the Pocket 3. It's the best vlogging camera you can get. The only issue is that you're forced to always be using the gimbal. And while the gimbal is wonderful for getting those smooth shots and you're going along a rail or you want to enter the room and get that cinematic look, and life is not like that all the time. Life feels a little bit more handheld, and I can't capture that perspective on that camera, which forces me to have to use my phone. And unfortunately, those cameras do not match the way I would like them to match, and it's my vanity, I'm gonna be honest. And because my regular camera is that Sony ZV-E10, like, it's a really good camera, but ain't nobody trying to set up a tripod all the time. It's just too much. Like, I'm not saying that I'm not gonna still do that. Like, when I film Dad's Diaries, that part of that series is about like trying to make it look as good as possible, really romanticizing your life. Or am I just gonna pick it up and get going, grab the camera and just start talking, which is what I really wanna do. I wanna just start talking. I think once you get those first couple of clips filmed and you get those jitters out, like, you get comfortable, you get into a kind of a flow. And it's harder to do that when you're setting up the camera. Dan from It's a Wealthy Life was pointing out that I like to film in my bed. And it's not so much that I like filming in my bed, it's just those shots, whenever I'm filming in my bedroom, early in the morning, late at night, like, that's the most raw, that's the most honest, because it requires the least amount of setup. When I'm setting things up later on in the day, there's way more setup involved because I have to be more strategic. When it's dark, I can typically just set up one light and go, or I set it up the night before, and as soon as I wake up, I'm just rolling. That makes it a little bit more raw. It's a little bit more organic. And that's just the feel that I want from my content. I don't think I ever want to go super produced. Like, I want it to visually look good, but I don't want it to ever lose the feel of like a regular conversation. As a director, you learn you can't have everything, so you choose what matters most. For me, it's the moment, not the lighting. If I waited for perfect conditions, then I'd probably miss the whole day. Fortunately, the Nano's pretty good in situations where you don't have the perfect light. I want to first say, you guys might notice that I film a lot at night, and it's not because I want to. One, it's later on in the year, so the days are getting shorter, but also, as a single dad, time is just not there. Like, I really try to give my day to my son, and part of vanity is acknowledging that, hey, if I'm building my entire process around what's not optimal for my actual schedule, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Because if I waited only until I had optimal lighting, I would probably never film videos. And I don't live a lifestyle where I'm like walking around. Like, I am in a beautiful location. Atlanta is fantastic. It's beautiful, big city, lights, all of that. But I don't live in a downtown high rise, so I'm not walking around the city like that. Like, I live in the suburbs. It's all trees and walking paths. So if I let my vanity drive when I create, I'm gonna create less. Let's talk about vanity for a second, because I think it's super important to understand that none of this is required. It's not necessary for me to use any particular device. It's not necessary that my image be 4K or I have 10-bit. I acknowledge that, because if I don't, then I don't realize why I do certain things. But outside of YouTube, there's all types of rules that I have to follow. But on this platform, I get to do whatever I want. And that's why I'm here. Like, I really love the ability to say whatever I want, present whatever I want, and do it however I want. But for me, if I could not make videos the way I make them, if they can't sound the way I want them to sound, if they don't look the way I want them to look, I'm not inspired. And I think it's okay for you to admit that about yourself, because if you don't, you start doing all types of goofy things because you think that's what you're supposed to do. I was having a conversation with Irene in the comments, and she was talking about this amazing footage that she had that she captured on her, I don't know, full frame Sony camera or something like that. And I told her that's great. And as long as it's on the memory card, it doesn't matter. See, my vanity early on was that I wanted everything to be filmed on a certain camera because I wanted it to look the best. And that required me to have this bigger setup, to be carrying multiple lenses and always be changing things out and popping on filters and blah, 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 blah. And it just took too long. And basically what happened was I wasn't creating enough. And I knew that if I want to really do content this time around, like, I'm gonna have to let that go a little bit. I built myself into someone who can handle a little bit of color grading, who can do a little bit of effects, but I certainly did not start out this way. When you go back and watch my older videos, you'll see that I talked about shooting in the standard profile on the Osmo Pocket 3. And I've evolved over time. And I think you have to allow yourself to do that. Like, you can't let your vanity put you in a position that you're not really ready to be in. If you're not ready to film outside, then don't put yourself in situations where you need to. If you don't have a specific aesthetic, then don't try to pretend that you're trying to maintain it. Why would you make your content more challenging by trying to be someone who's not you? It doesn't matter what camera you create on. It doesn't matter what resolution you film in. It matters what you're saying. Audio is more important because what you're saying, what your video is about, what your mission is, what your vision is, what your goal is, that matters so much more than what it looks like. That's what vanity refers to. So before we get into this, I just want to say, don't let your vanity get in the way of your vision.
You know, sometimes having too many options is even worse than not having enough. If you're documenting your life, you want to live it and not be stuck behind a camera missing the moments that actually matter. So let's talk about distractions.
So I'm out here on my lunch break. The sun is beaming down on me, but I do have an ND filter on here. And this is kind of the thing, like, you kind of take things for granted. So these are not the best lighting conditions, but I thought this would be an interesting contrast to what I just mentioned before. I think it's really important to note the conditions that people are filming in when they show off cameras, because if you're not shooting in those same situations, you're not going to get the same results. But real quick, I want to talk to you guys about 3 reasons not to buy a DJI camera. I think there are features that are advertised to people that don't matter at all, but when they see them on the ad or when someone talks about it, it sounds very impressive. 1, POV. POV is trash. POV is a perspective that you get in a very specific scenario that in a moment brings you in. It makes you feel fully immersed, like it's fantastic in that one scenario. It is not something that you can use to carry an entire project. So there's no reason to buy a camera based solely off of that. 2, a magnet. Magnets are everywhere. In my last video about the Osmo Nano, I talked about how I keep a magnet on my Osmo Pocket 3, but you can get a magnet from anywhere. So this right here is a little homemade magnet that I keep on the bottom of my Osmo Pocket 3, which is why I don't really mention it as a feature. I don't notice it because it's always there. Low profile, it makes the Osmo Pocket a little bit more useful. And it made it so when the Osmo Nano initially got announced, it didn't seem interesting to me. I'm like, yeah, my camera always has a magnet on it. Who cares? So if they advertise a magnet, understand that's not that impressive. That's not a big deal. Magnets are plentiful. You can get a magnet. If you don't have it in your camera built in, I'm sure there's a case that's going to offer it. Not to mention, there are not that many magnetic surfaces around. It seems like there's a lot because you think everything is metal, but when you start sticking a magnet to it, you realize it's not the right kind of metal. And the final feature, face tracking. Face tracking is something that I see now that there's a bunch of gimbals being offered that'll do face tracking so you can use it on like your regular phone, your Android, your iPhone, whatever. Obviously, the Osmo Pocket 3 has face tracking. As a viewer, face tracking is wildly distracting. I do not like it. Please do not use it. I think it's great for capturing specific shots. You know, you want to pretend you have a camera person there and you want to get this one specific thing. Cool. It's not going to track you the way a person would. You're probably tracking a wide angle, which is far less impressive. And how frequently do you really think you're going to use that shot? That's why I always encourage people to actually start filming with their phone, actually start creating before you start looking at cameras, because it's very distracting when people throw all these features at you, but you haven't actually used the camera. Once you start filming, once you start creating stuff, you realize what you actually need. And what I need is efficiency. I need gear that allows me to create more frequently. I need it to be easy. I need it to be light. And that's why the Osmo Pocket 3 is the best. It's not because of the features. It's because it's easy. Because creating is the challenge. I've shot 2 times more videos since getting the Osmo Pocket 3 than I did before when I was just shooting on the Sony ZV-E10. So with the Osmo Nano, I did purchase a set of ND filters, but I really wish I had actually bought a variable ND. So I'm actually returning the set that I'm using currently because I know that if I create a process that has a bunch of bottlenecks, that has a bunch of challenges, that is not enjoyable, I'm just gonna look for every excuse to not create, and I'm kind of giving myself a lot of opportunities to find them. Now, I always use a Pro Mist filter on my Osmo Pocket 3, but then if I'm out here in the daytime, I'm also adding an ND filter. Well, when I got the ND filter, like the full set, the 8, the 16, the 32, blah, 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 I got those for the Nano, and then my Pro Mist filter just arrived for it, and I realized you can't quite stack these the way you could with the Pocket because of the magnet. And it's just one of those things where once you get locked into your workflow, you get comfortable, you really sort of forget why something works out well for you. And as much as we want guidance and advice and help, no one can really help us until we know exactly what we need. And the only way we'll know what that is if we get out here and start doing it. I've surprisingly been able to get way more shots even faster than I could with the Osmo Pocket 3 using the Nano. The only problem is this thing's an eyesore. Like, whose bright idea was it to put DJI in white letters across the front of the camera? Before we head out today, I'm gonna wrap this thing in black. The camera's also annoyingly reflective, so you might want to go ahead and just wrap the whole thing.
But understand, everybody ain't go like you.
Back then they didn't want me, now they wanna be me. Keep the grass cut low, cause them snakes still sleazy. Always knew I had to glow, I just had to find a reason. Walking around looking like I own the place. I don't waste no food, man, I always finish off the plate. Ain't contemplate, trenches baby, can't believe we made it safe. Something out of nothing, yeah, we made a way. So hungry, think I overate. Every single shot, then I'm thinking John Wick. Every loss got a lesson, every make got a miss. I can't even think of a man that had me terrified. We got options, pick your poison, pick your side, pick your poison, pick a side, pick your poison, pick a side, pick your poison. Ain't no picking on me, all about to get me going, yeah.
It's a beautiful fall morning here in Atlanta, and I wanted to get out and run. I've been doing a lot of running lately. I've got the Nano sitting right here, and then I have the Pocket 3 over here. Of course, one of the reasons I got these 2 cameras was to have a 2-camera setup. I like to shoot multiple angles, and having 2 cameras that presumably should match pretty well, why not? We're thinking like producers, right? And as a producer, I have to set up some guidelines to keep me in check, because it is very easy for my mind to wander, but I can't do that. One of the biggest complaints about the Osmo Action is the battery life. It is frustrating that the Vision dock and the actual camera are charged through the same port, even though they're 2 separate devices, and one will die before the other. That's definitely frustrating. But in thinking like a producer, I don't look at that as a restriction. I look at it as something that keeps me in check. It's easy to want to complain that you can't change where you're focusing with the Osmo Nano like you can with the Pocket 3. But that limitation is what helps you to stay on task, because one thing that often happens to me when I'm filming is I forget to focus when I'm using the Pocket 3, whereas with the Nano, it's never a concern because I'm always in focus. And that becomes one less thing for me to have to worry about. It's also one more limitation that keeps me moving forward. And even though I love the visual aspect of having two cameras, the Nano for me is about efficiency. 2 shots, 1 setup.
A couple rules of engagements, I'ma guide you.
I dropped a video a couple weeks ago and I was talking about how to film your boring life. And in that video, I asked why. Because if you're looking for validation, documenting frequently is not necessarily going to give it to you. When I was vlogging daily, one thing that surprised me was that my views actually went down. If you're chasing those metrics and your videos don't perform, then you start to question yourself. Like, you wonder if what you're making is good enough. So if you're going to document your life more frequently, you need to do what makes you happy, because the completed project may be all you get.
So obviously one of the reasons the Nano helps you to document more is simply because now I have 2 cameras. Now, my mind has to think about it a little bit more than I would traditionally. So I have to think, is this camera gonna be in the way of this camera? It is a bit of work, but it's kind of all mental. Once you do that a few times, you start to refine a process and you kind of figure out where they need to be. Now, with the Nano being a little bit wider than I would like, I tend to not put both cameras on the same level. That way they don't really get in each other's way. And then when I get into post, I can auto align the clips using the audio. And then from that point, it's just picking and choosing which shot works the best. As my thoughts change, I switch camera angles. That way, I've technically already made that cut in post while I'm filming. The biggest challenge you're gonna have with wanting to document your life more often is editing. And if you shoot in a more organized fashion, it's gonna make posts way easier. And I've already mentioned that one of the reasons that the Nano helps me to document more is simply because of its convenience. Size, weight, magnet. I'm not always gonna get exactly what I want in a moment, but I'm gonna capture something. And once you build up a bank of footage, then you can start going through it to try to figure out what your story is. So how do I consistently say that the Osmo Pocket 3 is a better camera, but still admit that the Nano helps me to create more often? The Osmo Pocket is amazing because it gives you precision. The problem is when you spend a bunch of time trying to pan, tilt, adjust focus, you're bound to miss something. And if you want to document more often, you have to capture moments as they happen. So what ends up happening is the limitations of the Nano end up becoming its greatest strength. When I was vlogging daily, I didn't think I'd be able to come up with new ideas, but what ends up happening is you kind of let go of whatever restrictions you previously had. Like, your brain just goes to a different place. And I think when you go to more frequent documentation, you give yourself a little bit more latitude. You're not worried about everything being perfect. You're not worried about saying everything you want to say. You simply focus on capturing things and then just putting it out. So personally, I do a bit of research as to types of videos that I could make, different topics that people are talking about, and then I just try to figure out how I can put my own spin on them. But outside of that, I just draw from my personal experience. And if I'm documenting my day and I don't have anything particularly special going on, then it's just a day in the life of a single dad, and I'm totally fine with that. But I've also divided my content into different series based off of their format. I've got cooking content under Dinner for Two, then I have the Pages series, which you're watching right here, which is kind of a day in the life, and then we also have Dad's Diaries, which to me is like my flagship project, an ongoing series chronicling my life as a single dad. And that is where we take everything that we do in the other series and we put them together and make longer videos. I think you have to kind of decide what your vision is. Do you want to make story-based content? Do you want it to be day in the life? Or do you want to do more documentary style pieces? And depending on what you decide, I think you just tailor your expectations accordingly. But I simply don't put pressure on myself for any specific outcome. And I think that's where people get tripped up. If you're genuinely just documenting for yourself, then it doesn't really matter how you do it or what you do. But if you're trying to grow your platform, you may have to be a bit more strategic with what you release. Now, I do a non-traditional kind of vlog. So I'll go out and I'll collect a bunch of footage, and as I'm filming, I'm kind of putting everything in the buckets. Like, I'll create all these different folders, and that's kind of what will start a vlog. So in some situations, I will arrive at a location knowing what I want to talk about. In others, I just record my raw thoughts, and then I deal with the footage when I get back home. I think primarily, the Nano just gives me the confidence to get shots that would probably be a little bit too involved with the Pocket. Whether I'm out at the grocery store or in a town square, the Nano allows me to capture moments so much quicker than I expected. My confidence vlogging in public has definitely increased since I got the Nano.
And I'll even give an honorable mention to the internal storage. It's a feature I never thought I would have use for, but there's been times when I go to offload the footage from the Pocket 3, totally forget to put the memory card back, and then I get out into the field and don't have a memory card in there. And every time I end up kicking myself wishing I'd been able to capture something. But now that I have internal storage, worst case, I have to delete a file, but at least I can still capture something in the moment. Despite the concerns about using the Vision dock with the Osmo Pocket 3, I would still say it's been really nice to have. Definitely has come in handy in situations where I have both cameras and I want to pop back and check the Pocket 3 footage versus the Nano. If you're just using the Mimo app, you wouldn't be able to monitor two devices unless you have two different like iPads or something. And maybe that's a problem that I've created for myself, but it is very nice to have that Vision dock to be able to check shots quickly and discreetly on the fly. I think the most important thing to take from this video is that this is about philosophy. The same principles that I'm using to document better and more often with the Nano are the same principles you could use with your phone. That mindset shift from a director to a producer really helps you to move forward with your projects instead of lingering and trying to constantly tweak things in order to make them perfect. Because guess what? They'll never be anyway. When you document often, you'll probably get bored of your own life. So the Nano helps you to find new and more creative ways to document your story. So if you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. If not, I think I'm gonna get back to telling mine.